So when Dolan's brother was 5 or 6, he had a stuffed monkey. Every night, it would sneak up right beside him and attack him. The monkey would not let him leave his bedroom or even get out of bed. Dolan's brother even thought it may have just been a dream, but it happened every night. One time, he left his room to grab some water, came back, and the monkey knocked the cup over and the water spilled all over his alarm clock. This went on for 5 months until his mother and his stepfather had had enough of his complaining. His mother took the stuffed monkey, went somewhere else in the apartment complex, and got rid of it.
One time when it snowed, Helbin and his friend went for a walk on the icy roads. Along the way, and for some reason, they decided to make a snowman in the middle of the road. It wasn't anything unusual until Helbin asked his friends,
"What would it feel like to put my dick in this snowman?"
So his friends got a stick and made a hole in the snowman, then watched as Helbin dry humped it.
There was a girl James Shark liked when he was in the 8th grade. He wanted to tell her, but was too nervous. So he decided to send her an email, which she responded to by saying, "Oh, okay." Everything was fine until lunchtime when a guy walked up to James Shark and asked, while smirking, what his shoe size was. Instead of answering, James Shark walked up to the girl he liked and asked,
"Honestly, do you really care about my shoe size?"
Embarrassed, he walked away while hearing a loud laugh behind him, which came from the guy who asked him about his shoe size. Later, the girl told James Shark that the guy was a dick who tells lies.
The dumbest thing that Spinal Palm ever believed was that the world used to be black and white. One day his mother showed him a black and white photograph, and he asked her, "Why does it look like that?" She answered that there was no color when the photograph was taken. Spinal Palm asked if there was color outside in the real world, and she said that everything was black and white until recently. And so for the next few years, Spinal Palm imagined that everything in the world was black and white when his mom was younger. Interesting.
When Honeybits was a baby, her mom accidentally locked her keys in the car with Honeybits still inside. Her mom was panicking, trying her hardest to get her out when this woman walked up to her mom, looked at her, then looked at Honeybits in the car seat and said calmly, "She's going to die in there, you know that?" And walked away without helping. Luckily, her mom finally found someone to help her break into the car, but she'll never forget how unhelpful that stranger was. What was the weirdest phone call I've ever gotten? One time, a person I knew, let's not call him a friend, had to stay over at my place. It was either stay here or sleep under the bridge, and I couldn't just let him sleep under the bridge. He asked if he could use my phone, and I'm thinking this increases the chances of him getting out of my house more quickly, so I let him do it. The next day, he picks up and leaves, so I'm happy for him. He's out of here, he's got a place to sleep, I did a good deed, everything's good. Then the phone rings, and this guy with a throbbing cock of a voice answers, and you know that means a lot if I'm saying it, and he just starts screaming at me. He said, "You stay away from Becky! She's my girl, I know what you've been doing, you jackass!" I told him I didn't know who Becky was, and his response was, "I know you've been calling her! I know, I'm gonna come down there and kick your fucking ass!" I told him that I let a friend borrow my phone and that it must have been him. His response was, "Don't you fucking lie to me! I can hear in your voice, you're a fucking liar! I'm gonna come over there!" This is the abridged version, by the way. It was actually about a 15-minute phone call. Anyhow, I was done listening to him, but I was a little bit pissed off at his attitude, so I told him, "Yeah, I fucked Becky. I'm gonna come fuck her again. What are you gonna do about it?" He kept screaming at me, and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna come over there right now and fuck Becky in front of you." And his response was, "Becky's not even here right now, asshole." And I said, "Oh, she's not? She must be over at Craig's place." Then he screamed, "Who's Craig? Who the fuck is Craig?" And I said, "I don't know who Craig is, I just know where Craig lives, and that's where Becky goes." I was bored of the screaming, yelling, and death threats, so I took the phone, placed it next to a cheap PC speaker, cranked the volume all the way up, and played the Pokemon theme song, and played it again and again and again every time he called back. I haven't heard from him since, so I like to think he's on a magical journey looking for Craig's house. Oh yeah, and if your name is Craig and you run into a guy that sounds like that, ask him how Becky's doing.
Doopy used to work at a busy bar near a railway station. One afternoon, she was cleaning and restocking the bar when a guy came in to have a few drinks while waiting for his train. He was finishing his drinks quickly, so Doopy came over to take his empty glasses away. Suddenly, the guy started talking to her and held out his hand. Doopy thought he wanted to shake her hand or maybe give her a tip. But instead, he grabbed Doopy's arm and licked from her wrist to her elbow. Doopy was so grossed out, but she decided to get a little payback. She looked at him and said sarcastically,
Thanks for that, but I've just spent all afternoon cleaning and scrubbing and emptying the bins, and I haven't had time to wash my hands yet.
The guy was so disgusted that he had just ingested bin juice that he puked all over the carpet. Luckily, the manager gave Doopy a break and cleaned it up, which meant Doopy was free to watch Judge Judy for the rest of her shift. When Hellbent was young, he was walking through the schoolyard when his friend picked some weird packet up off the ground. Hellbent was young and asked if the square packet was some sort of candy. His friend looked at it for a second and then took it in his hands. He explained to Hellbent that it was actually an unused condom still in its wrapper. He looked at his friend, slightly confused, and he asked him, "How do you know what a condom looks like?" He told Hellbent in a matter-of-fact voice, "Oh, the principal showed me." And he flung the packet and continued walking. Hellbent stood there, unsure how to respond.
Back in 2012, Robo had two dogs named Buster and Patch. Patch loved to have a good time with Buster, as in humped him, which Buster just ignored. When Buster died, they buried him in the backyard. Afterwards, Patch tried to hump Robo's leg and people that visited the house. That night, Robo let Patch outside to do the business. Later on, Robo thought she heard something upstairs. She thought Patch was inside but woke up the next morning and couldn't find Patch anywhere, until she went outside to water the plants. There, Robo found Patch humping Buster's dead body. Robo was almost sick. She couldn't believe that she left Patch out all night. That was when she decided to turn Buster into ashes.
So, McKylam's girlfriend loved to drink whiskey, and when she got drunk, she would do crazy things. One night, he went to buy 5 bottles of whiskey, so it lasts till Christmas. McKylam left the bottles on the table and was going to get some ice for them, but when he returned, he saw that they were gone. He was like,
"What the fuck happened to the drinks?"
He went to check on his girlfriend, who was nude, dancing, and throwing the bottles around her room. His sister called the police, blaming him for making his girlfriend drunk. She also called McKylam a pervert. He has since broken up with his girlfriend.
When Spinal Palm was in 7th grade, there was a girl he had a huge crush on. He wanted to ask her out and eventually learned that she knew sign language. Spinal Palm asked his brother, who also knew sign language, to teach him how to ask, "Do you want to be boyfriend and girlfriend?" in sign language. He agreed, but it turns out he wanted to sabotage Spinal Palm. He didn't know this at the time, but when he asked her out, he actually told her to fuck off. The girl never talked to Spinal Palm again, and he was confused when he was suspended for using vulgar language at school.
Once, when Dolan's parents were out of town, he and his mysterious brother were wrestling on their parents' roof, which seemed like a great idea at the time. In a moment of fury, Dolan's brother threw Dolan straight over the edge onto a plastic table below. If it weren't for the table being there, he would have landed face first into concrete. What a Christmas holiday that was.
A few years ago I was travelling to some different countries. I stopped in Austria, which is a beautiful place to visit, and borrowed a bike to see some of the countryside. It was a good way to get around. At one point I went down a gravel road, and it became a bit slippery and I fell off the bike. I looked down and my leg was bleeding, like a lot. I had to hold onto it to stop some of the bleeding, and that meant I couldn't ride back. I had to walk back to the hostel I was staying at. Along the way there were lots of cars. It was maybe 5 kilometers, and it was obvious that I was hurt, but nobody stopped. It took maybe 2.5 hours to walk back through, admittedly beautiful scenery, but I would have preferred to see it sitting in a car of someone who was helping me out. In high school, Mkalam and his friends were in the gym when people started running out to the hallway. They ran out with them and saw 2 seniors, Hellbent and Nixium, fighting. Of course, because of that, there were a sea of people surrounding them. It was a normal fight at first, but then Nixium's girlfriend came out to stop it and immediately got punched in the face and knocked out. A teacher got sucker punched, and by the time he got up, there were 3 more teachers running down the hallway to stop it. Suddenly, Nixium pulled a knife from his backpack. Before he had a chance to do anything, he got tackled. After the fight, Mkalam went to talk to one of the kids who said, "Oh yeah, they were fighting because Hellbent said he was better at football, and then Nixium got angry." Mkalam couldn't believe that he really pulled a knife over that.
For some odd reason, Froggy's school didn't allow mixed match socks. It got to the point where teachers would write people up for not wearing white socks. Although there were a few teachers who didn't care about that rule, a vast majority did. Froggy didn't follow the rule because she would wear high heels. But there was one time where she wasn't wearing high heels and came across two teachers talking about the rule. As they talked, they began pointing to the students who weren't following the rule. One of the students they pointed at was Froggy, who wanted to say, "I don't fucking care about your rules!" She didn't want to get in trouble though, so she kept her mouth shut. When I was younger, I told a kid that if he did a very specific thing in Tomb Raider, he could see Lara Croft naked. Of course, the task was impossible. You could never jump over that statue, and even if you did, there was no nude code for Tomb Raider. But the best part about this lie is that it was printed in gaming magazines as sort of an April Fool's joke, so I could show it to him and say, yeah, look, it's right here, you can see it, it's right here, it's real. Poor little guy must have spent days trying to find that sweet triangular titty, but he would never be able to do it. Best part is, if he called me a liar, I'd just point at the game magazine and hope he didn't notice it was the April 1st issue.
Snoopy joined the army to pay off her student loans because she wanted to open a bakery together with her fiancé of 7 years. During boot camp, Snoopy was able to get one phone call home. In that call, her fiancé flat out told Snoopy that her stuff was going into storage and he had found someone else. When Snoopy asked who she was, he said, "It's not a she, it's a he and you don't know him." Snoopy had been with him since high school and all through college and had no idea.
The weirdest thing Zerangamba saw at a recent party was when he was at a formal function. It was a black tie, so everyone was dressed very elegantly. However, one of the guests didn't seem to get the memo about the dress code, and they walked into the party wearing a unicorn onesie. She seemed oblivious to the fact that it wasn't a costume party, and began helping herself to the snack table. All of a sudden, she discovered something about her costume, and turned around to tell everybody, "Hey, my butt has a tail." Everybody facepalmed, including Zaraganba.
When Andy was 14, she went with her boyfriend Adam to the 8th grade dance. On the way there, he was tense. Every time Andy asked him what was wrong, he would nervously say that he was fine and look out the window of the car, shaking the whole time. When they arrived, he went immediately to the bathroom, and when he came back, he said he felt better, but that obviously wasn't true. They danced, then ate, then danced some more. At the end of the dance, Adam started leaning in to kiss Andy, but then he barfed all over her blue expensive dress. He just stood there for a minute before saying, we're done. I'm sorry, but this is too embarrassing." Then he barfed on her some more.
Pandora was in 3rd grade. There was a restroom right outside her classroom. In the middle of class, they heard the sound of a kindergartner, or maybe a 1st grade boy crying in the boys' room. The teacher went to investigate, and from the classroom, Pandora and her classmates heard him cry. "I can't poop." Of course, they all gave each other confused looks, and some kids laughed. Suddenly, they heard the boy yell, "I need a book!" Seconds later, the teacher scrambled looking for a book the boy would be able to read. Then, out of nowhere, everyone saw the teary-eyed boy standing in the doorway with his pants half down. Pandora and her classmates started freaking out and averting their eyes, but the poor little guy just seemed startled and confused. That was many years ago, and Pandora sometimes looks back on the day and wonders if that poor kid ever looks back too, and cringes in embarrassment.
Snoopy's uncle collects Barbie dolls and gives them accurate body parts. He brought his dolls to a family dinner to show the other adults, but he left them sitting around, and Snoopy and her young cousins found them and started playing with them. When Snoopy's mom found them with the dolls, she was pissed. Snoopy's uncle never brought the dolls to a family gathering again.
When Ghost Toast was younger, he lived in a share house with his cat and one roommate. The roommate made it obvious that she hated cats, so Ghost Toast's kitty avoided her. One day the roommate took it upon herself to clean Ghost Toast's room. She grabbed a pile of dirty clothes from under his bed, put them in the washing machine and put it on a low cycle. She'd also picked up Ghost Toast's cat, who often slept under the bed. She claims she didn't realize the cat was in the pile, but that's obviously cat-hating bullshit. Ghost Toast heard his beloved kitty meowing in distress and raced into the laundry to rescue it. He took the poor thing out of the washing machine and raced straight to the vet to treat its head injury. Luckily the cat survived and eventually gave birth to 9 kittens. Ghost Toast's roommate, on the other hand, was thrown out on the street.
Snoopy's school tried for a whole year to make hallways and stairwells one way only. It was a small school, so they thought this would help with the dangerous amount of congestion, but it was a total disaster. It was just impractical. One time Snoopy was on her way to class when she realized she'd forgotten something on the ground floor, but she couldn't just turn around and get it. She had to follow the one-way arrows and do an entire lap of the building to get to where she wanted. And this made her late for class. The rule was so stupid that even teachers didn't follow it. They were happy to enforce it and give students detention if they caught them disobeying it.
One time when Slapped Ham was 8 years old, he was playing soccer with his friend Robo, who accidentally kicked their ball into a basketball court. Slapped Ham found the ball sitting next to a post and decided to kick the ball back into the field. He swung his foot but missed the ball completely and kicked the metal post so hard he broke his foot in 2 places. He got rushed to the hospital and had a cast for a good 6 months and had to go to muscle rehab every week.
When Pringle was 3 years old, his parents left him with a douchebag babysitter named Benny. All he did was play Crash Bandicoot on Pringle's PlayStation 2. It was the only reason he agreed to babysit Pringle in the first place. When Pringle tried to ask him something, the babysitter got distracted and died in the game. He looked Pringle dead in the eye and said, "If you don't shut up, I'm going to stuff hot dogs down your throat." Pringle avoided him until he left and then told his parents. He didn't see him again after that.
Honeybits had a babysitter who did all kinds of crazy things. One time, she threw her plate of mac and cheese out of the window. Then, she randomly pulled out a gun and began shooting faces. Toward the end of the night, the babysitter took Honeybits' baby sister out of her crib and fell asleep in it. An hour later, she woke up and called her boyfriend. Her boyfriend came over and they made out in front of Honeybits and her sister. Honeybits called the police, who came over and arrested the babysitter. When Tulip was 13, he got a phone call when he was home alone. The stranger on the phone said he sold security systems. He asked if his parents were home, and if his house had a security system. Sweet little innocent Tulip said no to both questions, and the man said okay, and hung up. Tulip immediately realized that he just told a stranger that his house was defenseless. So he immediately checked the locks on all the doors and windows, grabbed a kitchen knife, and locked himself in his bedroom. None of Tulip's neighbors were home, and there was a strange van parked down the road with someone in it. Poor little Tulip kept watching, but nobody entered or exited the van. Eventually, the van just drove away. I guess they were looking for televisions and not little boys. What a lucky little guy he is.
One day, Hellbent was planning a trip to London to see his mother. He planned to take a train and bus to get there, but just as he was about to leave, his mother called. She told him she picked up the norovirus while on her cruise, and that he shouldn't bother coming down to see her until she was better. So Hellbent stayed home. Later that night, he was watching TV when his mum called in a panic. She told him to put the news on. He changed channels and they were both shocked. The bus Hellbent would have caught was blown up in a terrorist attack. If his mother hadn't gotten sick from her cruise, he would have been on that bus at the exact time.
One day, when he was 9, Emoji and his family were at GameStop browsing for games for the Wii that they were just given by their grandparents. Emoji went over to the shelf and saw a game that he played all the time at his friend's house. He grabbed the game and saw that it was almost $60. He didn't want his parents to pay that much for a game, so he grabbed a pre-owned Wii game, which was priced at about $12. Then he grabbed the Wii game he wanted, cut the tape on the side with his fingernail, opened the pre-owned game the same way, switched the disc, then put the pre-owned game in the new game's case back on the shelf. He adjusted the tape on the case that the new game was in so it didn't look like he cut it, brought it to his mom, who then brought it to the counter and bought it. Emoji waited for days after that for someone to call his mom and tell her that they knew what he did, but it never happened. To this day, he still has the game, still in the pre-owned game case.
This was very weird for me, and it's a pretty short story, but pretty much I had just finished eating lunch, and I stepped outside of the cafeteria, and I was standing beside a garbage can just waiting for the bell to ring so I could go back to my class. And that's when I heard a noise beside me. There was some sort of thing in the garbage can. I reached out my hand, and I grabbed the lid, and I looked inside. and there was just some kid hiding in the garbage can. He just looked up at me and said, "Hey." I just slowly put the lid back on the can, and I walked away. To this day, I still wonder what the hell that kid was doing in there.
When Zaragamba was 15 years old, he decided to go bungee jumping. His friends went bungee jumping all the time and assured him that it was totally safe. He was pretty nervous, but went ahead with it anyway. But when it came to his turn, Zaragamba wasn't checked for the safety protocols properly, and when he finally jumped, the rope disconnected and he plummeted straight into the water below. Luckily, he survived, and the bungee company got into a huge amount of trouble for endangering his life.
Ghost Toast used to work at a dollar store stocking items. He went to an aisle to restock the peanut butter when he saw a kid, probably 9 years old, standing next to the maple syrup with his back turned. Ghost Toast couldn't see any adults near him, so he walked up behind the boy to ask where his parents were. The boy spun around, eyes wide, looking startled. That's when Ghost Toast noticed the half-empty bottle of syrup in his left hand and the puddle of syrup leaking from his pants. The kid was just pouring syrup down his fucking pants. It was an awkward 5 seconds before Ghost Toast dragged the boy to the checkout aisle, called for his parents. A woman came soon after, fussing at him as they left the store. Ghost Toast never saw him again.
My weirdest secret is that I bang every single woman on this channel, and nobody even knows about it. Oh, I wish.
The dumbest excuse Andy ever heard was from a co-worker at her job. Andy was enjoying a hard-earned 2-week vacation, but only after a few days, she was called back into work because one of the employees called in sick. Now, being sick isn't really a bad excuse, but what she actually said was, "I'm feeling sick, I won't be back till Tuesday." That call came in on Thursday. For some reason, this woman was too sick to come to work, but somehow knew the exact day she'd be able to come back. And that day was 5 days later, after the weekend. Sure, there was a chance she really was sick, but it seemed awfully suspicious. It turned out Andy was right. Her co-worker had taken a trip to a nearby city for an entire 4-day weekend just so she could go shopping.
James Shark was hanging out with his friends Legna and Slapped Ham one day, and they were playing Connect 4. Legna used a really sneaky move, and Slapped Ham called him out on it. But Legna went on to use the same sneaky move in the next 4 games. All of a sudden, Slapped Ham stood up, threw the game across the room, and punched Legna in the face. James Shark just scooted back and watched the fight happen. Soon, Slapped Ham's mom came to break them up and ended up getting punched as well. For 2 straight minutes, it was silent as they all thought about how a bunch of 16-year-olds were fighting over Connect 4. James Shark came out of the fight unscratched, but then his friends beat him up the next week for abandoning them to the wrath of Slapped Ham's mom.